modest-looking woman stepped into one of San Francisco's most elite dining establishments, immediately drawing skeptical stares. The hostess smirked. Servers exchanged hushed comments. Laughter rippled through the staff as they eyed her worn denim jacket, silently deciding she didn't belong. But their smugness faded the moment her billionaire husband walked in, and the gravity of their mistake hit them. Jessica Hayden adjusted her faded jean jacket as she made her way through San Francisco's financial district. At 35, despite her access to designer brands and luxury, she still favored comfort over labels. The crisp October breeze carried a hint of the nearby bay. She checked her watch. Still 2 hours until Nicholas would arrive. 5 years of marriage to one of the city's most powerful financiers hadn't stripped her of her small-town values. Their anniversary ritual was always the same. She spent the day wandering the city she'd grown to love, while Nicholas finished whatever high-stakes deal he was orchestrating. Then they'd meet at one of the upscale Lumiere restaurants for dinner. This year, though, Nicholas had switched things up. Instead of their usual waterfront location with sweeping views of the Golden Gate, he'd made a reservation at Lumiere's brand-new downtown venue, a place neither of them had visited before. Figured we'd try something different for our 5th, he'd told her, flashing the boyish grin that still made her heart skip. Jessica still remembered the day they met. She was a children's book illustrator at a small press, and he had come by to support a literacy fundraiser. In a world where people only saw his fortune, he'd been drawn to her sincerity. She, cautious of his wealth, was moved by his genuine interest in her art. "I'm not trying to impress you with my bank account," he'd said on their first date, which was at a simple coffee shop. "I just want to know the woman who paints whole worlds with a brush." 5 years later, their lives were completely intertwined. Though Jessica hadn't changed much, she still drove her old Volvo, preferred farmers markets to luxury groceries, and wore what made her feel like herself. She paused outside the glistening glass exterior of Lumiere. The restaurant spanned the base of a high-rise, its dazzling, chandeliers visible through towering windows. Inside, staff in tailored tuxedos moved gracefully between pristine tables, silver trays in hand. Jessica touched the small gift box tucked into her jacket pocket, a vintage watch she'd found for Nicholas engraved with the coordinates of where they first met. Modest in price but rich with meaning. Taking a steadying breath, she opened the heavy door. She had arrived early to make sure everything was perfect. But nothing could prepare her for the evening ahead, an evening that would unravel into a lesson in arrogance and appearance. The hostess stand was a work of architectural beauty, polished mahogany, gentle spotlighting, clearly designed to dazzle. Behind it stood a platinum blonde with a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name tag read, Vanessa. She scanned Jessica up and down. Denim jacket, simple blouse, light makeup. "Can I help you?" she asked, a hint of skepticism in her voice. "I have a reservation." "Well, my husband does," Jessica replied. "Under Morrison, Nicholas Morrison, 7 o'clock. Vanessa tapped through her tablet. Her brows rose slightly. The name was there. "That reservation is for 7. "It's only 5:15, she said coolly. "I know I'm early," Jessica smiled. "I thought I'd have a drink while I wait." "The bar is for guests with confirmed seating only," Vanessa replied, eyes flicking toward Jessica's jacket. "You might be more comfortable at the cafe across the street. We'll call you when your husband arrives." The word husband dripped with doubt. "I'm happy to wait here, thank you," Jessica said calmly. Vanessa exchanged a look with a passing waiter, a tall young man with slicked back hair whose name tag read Marcus. "Is there an issue?" Marcus asked. "This woman says she's meeting Nicholas Morrison," Vanessa said with deliberate emphasis. Marcus looked Jessica up and down. "The Nicholas Morrison?" "Yes," Jessica replied evenly. "And you're his wife?" he asked, tone skeptical. "I am." Another silent exchange. Then with a performative smile, Marcus motioned toward a tiny table tucked by the kitchen doors, the worst spot in the house. "Perhaps Madam would prefer to wait here. We're preparing for the dinner service." Dozens of empty tables surrounded her, but she was led past all of them to the corner. Staff were polishing glasses, adjusting flowers, glancing up as she passed with barely concealed smirks. "Would you like anything while you wait?" Marcus asked. "Water, perhaps." Jessica kept her composure. "A gin and tonic would be nice," he offered a smug half-smile. "Of course I'll need a credit card." Jessica, no stranger to subtle condescension, calmly slid her black card across the table. Marcus hesitated before walking away, his cool demeanor cracking ever so slightly. From her seat she spotted 3 servers whispering at the service station, casting amused glances her way. She recognized the look, judgment cloaked in forced professionalism. She'd seen it before at galas and fundraisers, right up until Nicholas appeared by her side. She scanned the room, taking in the opulence, chandeliers, artwork, fine linens, a place made to uplift some and belittle others. Jessica took a slow breath. Her husband wouldn't arrive for nearly 2 hours. This was going to be a long evening. It took nearly 20 minutes for the drink to arrive. When it did, the gin and tonic was weak and lukewarm, set down in front of Jessica with a smirk. "Compliments of the bar," Marcus said with fake cheer. Jessica had seen the bartender mix it long ago, then set it aside like an afterthought. "Thanks," she replied coolly, taking a sip and resisting the urge to grimace. "Could I see a menu, please?" "The kitchen doesn't open until 6, Marcus responded instantly. "And we're fully booked tonight. Your reservation isn't until 7. His message was clear. You can sit there, but don't expect service. By now, Jessica's presence had shifted from being an anomaly to becoming the entertainment. 2 servers, Claire, the blonde from earlier, and a red-headed young man, frequently, walked past her table snickering under their breath. Claire eventually stopped by, plastering on a sugary smile. "Everything okay over here?" she asked loudly enough for others to hear. "Finding everything comfortable?" "Yes, thank you," Jessica replied, maintaining composure. Claire gestured toward Jessica's jacket with a smirk. "We do have a coat check if you'd like to." "Upgrade." The red-headed server chuckled openly, making no effort to hide his amusement. Jessica felt her cheeks flush but kept her tone even. "I'm fine, thank you." As Claire walked off, Jessica overheard her mutter, "Probably some gold digger who lucked out. Morrison could have at least bought her decent clothes." Other diners had started to arrive, the room filled with tailored suits and designer gowns. Many gave Jessica curious or dismissive glances as they passed her corner seat by the kitchen. A woman in a Chanel blazer whispered to her companion, and both turned to stare. Marcus returned once again, hovering beside her. "Are you sure you've got the right restaurant?" he asked, voice dripping with condescension. "There's a casual bistro just down the block that may be more your style." "I'm in the right place," Jessica answered, patience thinning. "My husband made this reservation himself." "Of course he did," Marcus said, smiling insincerely. "And Mr. Morrison will be joining you shortly, I'm sure." Jessica checked the time. Still an hour to go. She noticed Vanessa leading a well-dressed couple to the very table Jessica had expected to be theirs, the one by the window with a perfect city view. A new server appeared next, a tall man from the reception area she'd seen earlier laughing with others. His name tag read Darius. "I've been assigned to your table," he said, the amusement barely hidden in his voice. "Though I understand you're just waiting." "That's right," Jessica replied, finishing her watered-down drink. "I'd like another gin and tonic. A proper one this time." Darius raised a brow. "A proper one?" "Yes, Hendrick's gin if you have it. 3 parts gin to 1 part tonic. Cucumber, not lime." Her precision seemed to catch him off guard. "I'll check." As he walked off, she overheard him whisper to a cluster of staff. Laughter followed. "She's ordering Hendrick's like she owns the place," he snorted. "Did you see that jacket?" Claire added. "Probably thrifted for $10. $10 says she's got the wrong night," Marcus chimed in. "Morrison's not coming." The laughter wasn't even subtle now. Diners noticed. A few looked uncomfortable, while others smirked at the quiet drama. From the service station, Jessica noticed the restaurant manager, a thin man with graying hair and wireframe glasses, speaking in low tones to the servers. He shot a quick glance at Jessica, brow furrowed. She sat tall, refusing to shrink beneath their scrutiny. She'd grown up in a Minnesota town where kindness mattered more than designer labels. Nicholas had loved that about her, loved her refusal to become just another high society spouse. Darius eventually returned, placing a perfectly made gin and tonic in front of her. "Your Hendrix, madam," he said with theatrical flair. "Anything else while you wait?" "No, thank you." As he walked away, she overheard him say to Claire, "The Morrison reservation." "Right," Claire replied, rolling her eyes. "I'll believe it when I see it." Jessica took a deliberate sip of her drink, now aware that much of the restaurant was watching her. The whispers, the judgment, the casual cruelty of people who thought she didn't belong, but they didn't know. Not yet. The restaurant had reached full swing now. Conversations hummed through the air. Elegant patrons chatted about investments, travel, and politics. Jessica remained at her corner seat, the center of unwanted attention. She opened her phone, scrolling, through photos of her and Nicholas from past anniversaries, snapshots of laughter, hikes, cozy dinners. None of them showed her in designer dresses or with a sculpted blowout. Nicholas loved her that way, loved her for who she was. A message lit up her screen. "Wrapping up now. Can't wait to see you. Happy anniversary, my love." Jessica smiled, tapping out her reply. "Already here? Table by the kitchen. Hard to miss. The rebel in denim." Seconds later, "My rebel bride. See you soon." She tucked her phone away just as the restaurant manager began to approach. "Excuse me, miss," he said, hands folded. "I'm Edward Winters, general manager. I understand you're waiting for someone?" "Yes. My husband." "Nicholas Morrison," Jessica said calmly. Edward's brow arched. "Nicholas Morrison, of Morrison Financial Partners?" She nodded. He hesitated, studying her again, quietly calculating whether she could possibly be telling the truth, weighing her words against the judgments of his staff. "I see. Well, would you mind providing some form of confirmation? We've had misunderstandings before." Before Jessica could answer, an elegant older woman from a nearby table stood up and approached. "Jessica? Jessica Hayden Morrison?" she asked with a kind smile. Jessica blinked, then smiled in recognition. "Mrs. Abernathy, what a lovely surprise." The woman turned to the stunned manager. "Mr. Winters, do you know who this is? Jessica Morrison, one of our foundation's most generous supporters. She and Nicholas funded the children's wing at the library last year." Edward paled. I didn't realize." "Jessica is an incredibly talented illustrator," Mrs. Abernathy continued. "Her books have brought joy to thousands. San Francisco is lucky to have her." Jessica was quietly grateful for the unexpected rescue. "Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy." "How is the foundation?" "Thriving thanks to people like you and Nicholas." She looked back at Edward. "I do hope you've been treating her well." Edward nearly bowed. "Absolutely, Mrs. Abernathy, we value all of our guests." Jessica caught the flicker of panic in his eyes. His whole demeanor had shifted. "Mrs. Morrison, please accept our sincerest apologies for any inconvenience. If you'd prefer a better table, we'd be happy to move you. There's a wonderful one by the window." "This table is fine," Jessica replied coolly. "I wouldn't want to interrupt your seating chart." Edward hesitated, clearly squirming. "Of course. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you need anything." As the manager walked away, Jessica noticed a sudden stillness among the staff. The laughter had stopped. The service station was quiet. Darius leaned toward Marcus and whispered something, their earlier smugness replaced with unease. The large clock on the wall read 6:40 p.m. Only 20 minutes remained until Nicholas arrived. Jessica could have ended this entire charade with a quick call or a single text to her husband, but she didn't. Part of her wanted them to feel the discomfort, the awkward realization, the weight of their assumptions crashing down on them. A young woman approached her table quietly. Jessica hadn't seen her before, and it was clear from her demeanor that she hadn't participated in the earlier mocking. She placed a small plate of hors d'oeuvres on the table and spoke in a soft, apologetic tone. "Compliments of the chef, Mrs. Morrison. I'm very sorry for how things started." Jessica offered her a kind smile. "Thank you," she said sincerely. The tide had begun to turn. Word was spreading. Patrons glanced her way now with recognition, not ridicule. Some looked uncomfortable, others clearly embarrassed by their earlier judgment. Across the dining room, Claire was being quietly reprimanded by Edward. Her posture was stiff, her expression increasingly humiliated. She kept stealing glances at Jessica, as if hoping to undo what had already been done. Marcus and Darius stood nearby, their cocky attitudes dissolved into anxious silence. Jessica sipped her now properly made drink and watched the shift ripple through the room. It was subtle but undeniable, respect replacing ridicule, guilt overtaking arrogance. And then the moment arrived. At exactly 7 p.m., Lumiere's front doors opened, and Nicholas Morrison stepped through. He didn't need to announce himself. His presence did that for him. He was tall, confident, and impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. His dark hair, streaked with silver at the temples, gave him a distinguished air. Yet nothing about him was showy. There were no flashy accessories, no unnecessary displays of wealth. Just calm, quiet power. Vanessa practically sprinted to greet him, her smile almost cartoonishly wide. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Lumiere." "Thank you," Nicholas said politely, scanning the room. "My wife should already be here, Jessica Morrison." Vanessa paled. "Your wife?" "Yes, of course. She mentioned she had arrived early." Her eyes flicked around, the dining room finally settling on the corner table. The realization hit her like a truck. "Right this way, Mr. Morrison." As Nicholas followed her through the restaurant, heads turned. Patrons nodded. Some even whispered. Everyone knew who he was. Nicholas Morrison wasn't just a wealthy man. He was a symbol of integrity in San Francisco's financial world. Successful, yes, but also respected, trusted. Jessica watched him approach, noting how the staff scrambled to get out of his path. Their earlier confidence was gone, replaced by sheer panic. Nicholas's face brightened when he saw her. "There she is," he said warmly, leaning down to kiss her cheek before taking the seat across from her. "Sorry if I'm a minute late, traffic was rough." "You're right on time," Jessica replied, smiling. "I've had quite the show." Nicholas raised an eyebrow, but before he could ask further, Edward returned, nearly tripping over himself in his haste. "Mr. Morrison, welcome to Lumiere. I'm Edward Winters, the general manager. We're absolutely honored to have you and your wife with us tonight." "Thank you," Nicholas said, still focused on Jessica. "I hope my wife wasn't waiting too long." Edward's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "She arrived a bit early, but we've been doing everything to ensure her comfort." Jessica looked up at Edward, meeting his eyes steadily. She didn't need to recount the details, the look was enough. "The view from this table's been enlightening," she said. Nicholas glanced around, suddenly noticing the setting. Tucked near the kitchen, it was clearly the worst seat in the house. His smile faded. A sharp, dangerous flicker passed through his eyes, one only those closest to him would recognize. "I'd requested a table by the window," he said, his voice low and calm. Edward flushed. "There must have been a miscommunication. Please, allow me to move you immediately." "That won't be necessary," Nicholas replied, his tone flat. "My wife seems comfortable." Edward stiffened, eyes darting nervously toward the service station where the staff now hovered, watching the exchange like prisoners awaiting sentencing. "Perhaps you could send over the staff who's been assisting my wife while she waited," Nicholas said, still polite, but with unmistakable steel in his voice. Edward hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, sir." As he hurried away, Nicholas reached across the table and gently took Jessica's hand. "What happened?" Jessica shrugged. "Let's just say some people made assumptions. Mrs. Abernathy was here, though. She recognized me." Nicholas grinned. Elaine's always had excellent judgment. Edward returned with Marcus, Claire, and Darius in tow. None of them looked as though they wanted to be there. Their faces were pale, eyes downcast. "These are the staff who assisted Mrs. Morrison?" Edward announced awkwardly. Nicholas studied each of them, reading their name tags aloud. "Marcus, Claire, Darius, did you look after my wife?" They exchanged panicked glances. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Morrison, there may have been no misunderstanding," Jessica interrupted gently. "Just some very honest behavior." Nicholas's expression darkened. "I see," he said, his voice chillingly even. Claire stepped forward, her confident facade gone. "Mrs. Morrison, please accept our deepest apologies for any confusion." "What exactly are you apologizing for?" Nicholas asked, his voice low and dangerous. Claire froze, mouth open. "Was it for the suggestion that I check my coat to upgrade my look?" Jessica offered helpfully. "Or for calling me a gold digger?" Darius looked like he wanted to disappear. "Sir, we never meant—" "Oh, I believe you did," Nicholas cut in. "I believe my wife was judged, dismissed, and humiliated for 2 hours because she didn't fit your image of wealth." Edward was visibly sweating now. "Mr. Morrison, I assure you this is not the standard of service we strive for. Disciplinary. Actions will be taken immediately." "Oh, there'll be consequences," Nicholas replied, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward Edward. On it was an email confirmation. "I was going to wait until next week to announce this," he said. "But as of 4 this afternoon, my firm has acquired a 60% stake in the Lumiere chain. All locations." The silence in the room was deafening. Every staff member froze. The truth hit like a wrecking ball. They hadn't just mocked a wealthy customer. They'd mocked the owner's wife. Nicholas slipped his phone away. "Now then," he said to Jessica, smiling once more, "what would you like to do, my love? Stay or leave?" Every eye in the restaurant was on her. Jessica had the power to end careers, ruin reputations, but she smiled. "Let's stay," she said. "I'd like to see what they're capable of when they're not judging people by their jackets." The rest of the evening unfolded like a carefully orchestrated performance, except now, every move the staff made was steeped in anxious precision. Jessica and Nicholas, still seated at their original table near the kitchen, became the quiet center of gravity in a restaurant that had been thoroughly humbled. Edward hovered close enough to oversee service, personally checking and double-checking every detail. The air of superiority that once clung to Lumiere's staff had evaporated. Whispers passed from table to table about the woman in the denim jacket, about who she really was, and most notably, about who she was married to. Despite the shift in tone, Nicholas insisted they remain at the very table where Jessica had endured hours of dismissal. "I want them to remember," he'd said, his voice steady but firm. And she agreed, not out of pettiness, but because it sent a message louder than any reprimand could. Their courses arrived with perfect timing. Appetizers were flawless, wine glasses never empty, and each dish more exquisite than the last. But Jessica's attention drifted often, not to the food, but to the subtle glances around them. Servers now bowed their heads respectfully. Patrons who had previously cast judgmental looks now avoided eye contact altogether. Nicholas cut into his steak and looked up at her. "You could have called me the moment they started treating you like that." Jessica tilted her head slightly, smiling. "You were in a meeting, and honestly, I wanted to see how far they'd go." "They were cruel," he said. "They were cruel to a woman in a denim jacket," she corrected gently. "Not to me, not really, to an idea. A version of someone who didn't belong here." He studied her quietly, admiration softening his gaze. "Most people would have demanded they be fired on the spot." Jessica sipped her wine, then set the glass down. "And what would that have changed? They'd carry their prejudice into the next job. Maybe now they'll think twice, maybe they'll learn something." As they finished their dessert, an immaculately plated crème brûlée, Edward approached once more, his posture tight, his smile practiced. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, he began, on behalf of the entire team, I want to express our sincerest apologies for the way Mrs. Morrison was treated earlier this evening. Jessica noted how carefully he avoided specifics, still trying to preserve the restaurant's dignity. I've taken the liberty of comping the entire evening, he added, hoping it would smooth things over. Nicholas shook his head. We'll pay in full. Edward blinked. Of course, sir. This isn't about money, Nicholas said plainly. Edward gave a tight nod, not daring to argue. There will be disciplinary actions, he added quickly, starting immediately. Jessica looked up at him, her voice calm but steady. Maybe, don't start with discipline, start with education. Teach them that worth isn't worn, that kindness matters more than couture. Edward looked taken aback, clearly unprepared for her grace. Yes, Mrs. Morrison, that's incredibly generous. When the check arrived, Nicholas placed his black card on the tray without hesitation. Edward handled it like a sacred object as they stood to leave. Jessica reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Almost forgot, she said, handing it to Nicholas. Happy anniversary. Inside was a vintage wristwatch engraved with the exact coordinates of the children's publishing house where they first met. Nicholas turned it over in his hand, his expression tender. It's perfect, he said, voice thick with emotion. Just like you. As they made their way toward the exit, the staff had quietly formed a line along the corridor. Marcus, Claire, Darius, they were all there, faces solemn, eyes downcast. Jessica paused in front of them. The silence was heavy. I hope this night taught you something, she said gently. Wealth doesn't always look like what you expect, and respect shouldn't depend on appearances. None of them replied, but their faces, marked with shame and humility, said more than words could. Outside, the valet pulled up with their car. Nicholas wrapped an arm around Jessica's shoulder as they stood under the soft glow of the street lamp. You okay? He asked. Jessica leaned into him, her eyes on the San Francisco skyline glittering above them. I'm better than okay, she said. Sometimes it's good to be reminded of who you are, and what actually matters. Nicholas smiled. And what matters to you, Jessica Morrison? She looked up at him, adjusting her denim jacket with a soft grin. Authenticity, compassion, and you. Always you. As their car disappeared into the night, the echoes of that evening lingered behind them. Not in anger, but as a quiet lesson. Appearances deceive, money speaks, but dignity? Dignity endures. Jessica had entered that restaurant, true to herself, and walked out exactly the same. That, in the end, was the most powerful statement of all.